Having some technical little hitches here. Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna.
Let's see how many devotees are with us this week. We had 15, I think, so far. Well, can I just, okay, let me just. So before I ask for that, we're going to do a little, we're going to do a little review as usual of last week. So while you're just thinking about that, I'm just going to share my screen, etc. So you can look at your notes and do that. So. Okay, so last week we did quite well. We didn't quite chapter 8. We're going to finish that today. So yeah, last week we did chapters 5 to 8, and we finished here on chapter 8. So anyone can just share some little review for us and what we. Let's first perhaps start with chapter 5. What did we cover in chapter 5? Very interesting chapter.
Execution and perfection of devotional service is not considered. It's not dependent on any material consideration. So you could be in any walk of life, but still be able to perform devotional service as best as you can.
Yeah, thank Krishna for that, as they say. Thank God for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that the title of the chapter is that
something I find.
Yeah, Krishna Gopal, please. Yeah.
It's something that I find quite not challenging. Well, challenging, and because I guess we're split in so many different facets, like the duty of a son, as our occupation and like that. It can feel that but from my perspective, that we're thinly spread, aren't we? But that's quite.
Yeah, Prabhupada speaks about in the Bhagavad
nice
Gita.
that this is said that it doesn't matter what material condition you are, you can still be able to perform. It's nice. It's nice.
Yeah. I mean, we've got different swadharmas, as Prabhupada mentions Bhagavad Gita. Some are, we could say, worldly in relationship to the body, and then we've got as spiritual dharma, swadharma, and sometimes they may clash. But ultimately, Uttama Bhakti or devotional service can, as this chapter points out, be performed in any situation. Yeah. So that's why it's called, chapter 5 is called Purity of Devotional Service. Yeah. So it's not dependent upon birth, purity of the self, or even it's not dependent on Varna and Ashram. So in essence, it's independent and self-sufficient. That was the essence of that chapter 5, proving the purity of devotional service to be independent and self-sufficient. Yeah, so then we went on to chapter 6, kind of changed direction. Anyone can give us a little clue about chapter 6? There's something in the chat here. Let me just bring that up. Initiation. Yeah, we spoke of, yep, that is in chapter 6. Basically, okay, I'll give you 3 more seconds, then I'm gonna give it away. 1.
64 items of devotional service.
Thank you, that's correct. So now then Rupa Goswami actually explains, after explaining the about the nature of bhakti, then he begins to explain how to do it. Yeah. So he gives 64. Well, he begins here in this chapter, in chapter 6, and all the way covering today as well. up to chapter 11, he's going to explain the 64 angas of devotional service. Yeah. So that was last week, and this will also be this week. Yeah. So that's chapter 6, and specifically of 64, which he mentions more than one time, and Vrindavan Nath and Ananda Vrindavan have put here in the chat the 5 key principles, or the 5 most important ones, which is Sankirtan here in Srimad Bhagavatam, associating with devotees, living in the holy Dham, and worshipping the deity. They are given, Rupa Goswami gives them as the most important of the 64 items. Those 5 are very powerful. And that will be mentioned again as well. Then we go on to chapter 7, which was just giving sastric evidence for the main angas. Yeah, one of them was Guru Pad.
I had a question on this from last week. Actually.
Is that a question coming through?
Sorry, this is Santosh Prabhu. Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yeah, your sound's very low, Prabhu.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Just about.
Okay, I'll just see if you can hear me.
Yeah, we can now.
Okay, so living in Mathura, so I think in Nectar of Instruction, it is said that there are other aspects that are higher than living in Mathura. So why is this the topmost principle?
Yeah, well, yeah, I think there you're referring to Mathura. Then in Nectar of Instruction, it goes on to describe ultimately Radhakund as being the topmost abode. Yeah, that's a nice detail to point out. But what Rupa Goswami's are referring to here, just the holy Dham in general, is good to practice devotional service. Yeah.
Okay.
Just a general statement. Whether it's Mayapur, whether it's Vrindavan, whether it's Jagannath Puri, but anywhere where the Lord has performed these pastimes is considered to be a good place to execute devotional service. But a nice point you brought up, then Rupa Goswami in the Nectar of Instruction, more in the mood of bhava and rasa, then he gives a definition of course, Radhakund being the best place. So if you really want to be particular, then you want to, Radhakund's the place, but good point. But it's a general principle here. Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Yeah. And the point is that I mentioned last week as well, is that we probably can't do that for most of us. We're unfortunate, we're not able to live in the holy dhams, but the idea is that we should live in or our home should be a place where devotional service is prominent. Yeah. So we should live in the atmosphere of devotional practice. Yeah. So in that sense, could say, as Prabhupada would often say when he would visit different temples throughout the world, he would say, this is Vaikuntha, whether it's Los Angeles or London or South London, where I am now. If devotional service is practiced, then it's Vaikuntha. Like there's a Vaikuntha in Soho. Yeah. That's called the Temple of Radha Londoneshwar. It's a Vaikuntha in Soho. Yeah. So it's a very important point to always be situated in the place that's saturated as much as possible with devotional practice. Yeah. So that was chapter 6. Then chapter 7, as we mentioned, was given evidence of the items mentioned in chapter 6. For instance, important ones was Guru Pad Ashraya, taking shelter of a guru. We spoke about that, and the process of Diksha. It's an important part of our spiritual life, and listening and taking instructions from the guru and service to the guru. And that was chapter 7. Okay, so then we went into chapter 8, which is, we didn't quite finish. Now, what I did, I was quite adventurous last week, and that the idea was to read through all the offenses. Yeah, so there's quite a few there. So I don't know, hopefully some of you may have read through them in your own time. But if anyone has any questions on these offenses to be avoided, if you've read it or there's some that you're not clear on, then perhaps you can ask, because it will take, as I said, it's a bit adventurous and it will take quite a bit of time to actually read through them all. So I was wondering if any of you had any questions on any specific ones. Yeah, Krishna Gopal, you have your hand raised here.
Yeah, my mother and I had just had a little discussion, but I'm still confused. So wailing in front of the deities is considered an offense.
Yeah, wailing. Yeah, it's nice. It's an interest because we visit the temple. You visit the temple, it's part of our culture. So these are very interesting to read. And one of them is, as Krishna Gopal mentions, wailing in front of the deities. Yeah. Now that means, say one has lost a loved one or someone close to them, and they're in a hysterical state, and they're sort of wailing and in front. It's not proper, actually. It's not correct. There's nothing wrong with crying for the loss of someone, but there's a time and place. You have to be a little bit discriminating, and in front of the deities is not the best. I don't know if you, I've experienced that, not so many times, but some time ago, there was one lady, she was in quite a state, and it very much disturbed, I don't disturbed is the right word, but it very much, yeah, you could say it very much disturbed the atmosphere of the temple, you know. So then another devotee, another lady devotee came, put her arm around her, took her to one side and sat her down, and she calmed down a bit. So I don't know if that helps, but it's not to be done, actually. We should, that's why it's also mentioned that if someone in your family dies and it's very upsetting for you, then it's best not to do direct service to the deities for some time. Yeah, because then that mental impression will go upon your devotional activities. So we have to be a little bit careful regards to the Lord's presence in the temple. Yeah. Does that help, Krishna Gopal? We can cry before the deities. In other words, hopefully at some point it will be natural. We can shed tears. We do, as some devotees may do in deity greeting,
Yeah.
That's one thing I get to see, because I do deity greeting and I always see the devotees taking darshan. And sometimes I see devotees have tears in their eyes. That's nice. That's natural. That's part of our, yeah, that's natural. But as far as wailing and howling, you get the idea?
I do, but I'm confused. Like in Mayapur, is that considered wailing, or is that something else? Because in Mayapur, the ladies also, well,
No, that's something else. That's called what's it called, ladies? Again?
That's in separation, isn't it?
No, that's a traditional Bengali thing, and it's a very auspicious sound, actually. They're not.
It's called Lulu.
Yeah, yeah, and that's not that's not what Rupa Goswami is referring to.
Okay.
That's something else. That's considered a very auspicious sound, actually. At festivals, they all do Mayapur. It's a very auspicious sound, actually. Yeah, so does that help, Krishna Gopal? That's not what Rupa Goswami is speaking about. Yeah, something else, yeah. Yeah, so anyone else, any questions about any of the offenses? One that comes to mind is when you're sitting in the temple, you shouldn't hold your knees, you shouldn't hold your feet. In other words, the offenses generally, it's in regards to the deities in Pacific and in the temple room. In other words, the idea is that the atmosphere in the temple is very formal. It's not informal. I mean, the Supreme Lord is actually in front of us. So we should sit in a very respectful way. We should carry ourselves in a respectful way. I think we had some discussion last week on laying down in the temple room. I think Krishna Gopal mentioned someone in Brighton who laying down in front of the altar. So like that, it's just to help us to understand who is present before us. So Rupa Goswami gives these different offenses, yeah, like that. So, but what I wanted to do, yes, please, Rupa Nuga Bhaktida, yes.
So there is a mention of not stretching the legs in front of the deities.
Yeah.
But I came across a couple of times that, not now, but years ago, like devotee or guest stretching their legs in front of the speaker.
Yeah, that's not correct, yeah.
So they were reprimanded.
Yeah, so I guess you have to be a little bit tactful. If you've got new people coming for the first time, they're just not going to know these things.
Yeah.
So you can't be too heavy with them if they stretch their legs before the Bhagavatam speaker. You know, sometimes I do that. I'm giving Bhagavad Gita class and someone comes in, perhaps for the first time, and I mean, I don't say anything.
Yeah.
But then, you know, yeah, then the people who come regular should be taught these things. Yeah, so you might politely tell them what is the correct procedure. I think I gave the example last week of when I went into Canterbury Cathedral with my hat on. And
yes, yeah.
Said, please take your hat off. I was very happy to get that instruction.
Yeah.
I was in ignorance, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does that help, Rupa Nuga? So yeah, it's there.
Yeah. Thank you.
We shouldn't do that again. It means we're being too casual.
Yeah.
In front of the Lord or in a sacred place, you know. So Santosh Prabhu, you have your hand raised.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Mother.
There is a question. There is a question on the next 32 list of offenses. One should not wear red or blue color garments.
Oh, yeah.
And then there is one more. One should not belch. So until one has fully digested his food, one should not enter. These are quite tricky, I feel. Like,
yeah, okay. Well, let's deal with the first one.
Okay.
The first one is often a point of discussion amongst devotees. One shouldn't. Well, what colors is it? Red and
blue.
Blue. Yeah. Now, interesting. I was listening to. I mean, I happened to be listening to a lecture where one lady asked Prabhupada this question, and Prabhupada gave the answer along the lines that he said, for now, we may not understand, but we should just follow because it's stated like that. And then he gives the example, like in the Vedas, it says that cow dung is pure and the conch shell is always considered to be pure, though it's a bone of an animal. So we may not automatically understand it, but we accept the principle. So that's one answer. Interesting. That's how Prabhupada dealt with that question. He said, for now, we may not understand. Other answers I've heard from Krishna Setra Maharaj is that generally that's referring to the priests or to the pujaris. So in other words, Krishna's the one who's going to be dressed in bright colors. Yeah. So we dress in kind of sattvic colors. You know, we're not trying to be the best dresser. So that's another answer that's given.
Thank you, Prabhu. I think the first one is obviously right.
Yeah. Now the second one you asked about, what was it again? Just remind me.
We should not belch.
Yeah.
And so until one has fully digested his food, he should not enter the temple. How do we know at what point of time the food is fully digested?
Now, generally that's an instruction again for the servants of the Lord, specifically the pujaris. Now they will ideally be very regulated in their habits of eating, etc. So that's why priests or pujaris won't have a big meal before they do their service, because they don't want to belch before the Lord. So generally that's kind of indicating that we should be regulated. And it's more for those who are doing direct service on the altar. They also mentioned you shouldn't pass air in front of the deities like that. So these can also be kept in mind when we're going for darshan. Now, don't worry too much. It shouldn't be like, if you try and just remember, it's really for those who are serving the deities directly. So it doesn't mean if you're just taking prasad in Govinda's restaurant, then you can't go and take darshan until you've digested everything. Yeah, it doesn't mean that. It just means we can take it as visitors to the temple that we have to. Well, in any public place, it's not a seen thing, is it? Where you belch loudly. I know, even in today's time,
absolutely correct.
let alone in the temple.
Yes, yes.
It's okay.
Yes. One more question, Prabhu.
Yeah.
And these are again very subtle because these are some things we spontaneously do. We should not praise others in front of the deity.
Yeah.
But if someone comes in, we are in the temple, another friend comes in, we automatically say, "Oh, you're looking nice." It's not like really praising, but just being civil and all that. We should not. No, we should not.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you. Obviously, devotees obviously read through these, and you have very interesting questions. Yeah. So, yeah, we shouldn't. Yeah. Sorry, my mind went somewhere. Your point again was just on.
We should not be praising others.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, that's it. I was thinking of the answer while you were speaking, so I didn't hear the other half of your question. So, yeah, but that doesn't mean that. But the principle of, for instance, Bhagavatam class is all about praising the devotees. Yeah. So that's pleasing to the Lord, and that's an aspect of actual devotion. But it does mean in that part, there's your question, which you mentioned at the end, where you're glorifying a devotee for, say, not glorifying, but you're praising their how they're dressed and things like that.
Yeah. That shouldn't be done.
Generally, you both want to focus on the deity, and for instance, in that example, how well dressed the deities are.
Right. Okay.
So again, it's a subtle one. Of course, depends on the temple as well. Depends on your situation. Some temples you come in and it's obvious it's quite a formal setting, so it's easier to remember these things. But other smaller temples, then sometimes we may kind of forget these things. So just keep that in mind.
Yes.
That's what's required when the Lord is present. We should praise Him.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
All right. Any other questions at all about these? If not, we can. I did want to cover one point in this. And again, if you didn't read through these and you've heard these questions and you find them quite interesting, you're quite welcome to read during the week, and you can bring up questions next week as well. Okay. Now, I did want to cover this point here in chapter 8, because it can be a confusion. This is there in chapter 8. I'll just read here. One should begin the worship of the demigod Ganapati, who drives away all impediments in execution of devotional service. In Brahma Samhita, it is stated that Ganapati worships the lotus feet of Lord Nrsimhadev, and in that way has become auspicious for the devotees in clearing out all impediments. Therefore, all devotees should worship Ganapati. So this is often a question that's raised, and it was a question upon reading Nectar of Devotion that Prabhupada's disciples asked him. So interesting how Prabhupada answered, because in one sense here it is. It's quite straightforward. It's there in the Nectar of Devotion, and directly by Rupa Goswami. Yeah. So, but that's why the Acharya, or for instance our Acharya, Prabhupada, he will put this in context for us. So generally, Prabhupada did not install or did not encourage devotees to worship Ganapati. There's no particular letters, there's no particular purport, apart from this recipe here, directly quote from Rupa Goswami, where Prabhupada speaks much at all about this principle of worshipping Ganesh. And as far as removing impediments, that we know that Prabhupada directed us to worship Lord Nrsingadev. That's quite clear, you know. And we have Nrsingadev deities in our temples, but we don't have Ganapati deities in our temple. But still, the question is very poignant, because Prabhupada, here it is, you know. So here's one letter that Prabhupada, well, one request or one question, and here's one letter of how Prabhupada replied. It's obvious the question that's being asked. So far, worshipping Ganesh is concerned, that is not necessary. Not that it should be done on a regular basis. So he seems to indicate it may be done, but he says not on a regular basis. If you like, you can pray to Ganapati for removing all impediments on the path of Krishna consciousness. That you can do if you like. So that was a personal letter to a Shivananda Prabhu. Yeah. But again, Prabhupada didn't make it a practice within our temples. Yeah. And then this next letter, this one's in 1971. This one's in 1974, a few years later. Prabhupada has he's been asked the same question. And his mood is a little bit different here. I do not encourage you to worship this demigod Ganesh. It is not required. It is not necessary. Simply worship Krishna. Perform nice devotional service to Krishna. Then your lives will certainly become perfect. Of course, if one has got some sentiment for achieving the blessings of Ganesh, for accumulating large sums of money to serve Krishna, then he may perform this Ganesh worship. So interesting, okay? Then Prabhupada says, privately, not making a public show. So that's the same mood as the last letter. Privately, not making a public show. But then he says this next part. But first of all, he must give me $100,000 per month. Not a single farthing less. If he can supply this amount, 100,000 per month, then he will be allowed to do this Ganesh puja. Otherwise, he should not do it. It will not be good. This is my order. So Prabhupada, we could say he's being a little bit sarcastic here. So in other words, Prabhupada wanted us to be very clear on our worship, other than, say, the general, could say, Hindu understanding is very, can be very unclear. And so many different deities to worship for different reasons. And that's why Krishna lifted Govardhan Hill and encouraged all the residents of Vrindavan to depend upon Govardhan rather than Indra. So Prabhupada, feeling the pulse and seeing his disciples, or seeing the easy possibility of getting distracted from Uttam Bhakti, which is completely being dependent on Krishna, he kind of gave this instruction, which kind of oversees the quote from the Nectar of Devotion. Yeah. So I thought that might be interesting for you. Is anyone any questions on that? It often comes up, you know. All right. So that was, yeah, please.
One more question.
Yes, please.
This Ganesha or Ganapati is very important to many Indians.
Yes,
we are invited by our non-Vaishnava Indian friends during Ganapati to their houses to attend their worship. So we go there, but while we are there, because we are just being nice or being not unfriendly, we should just pray that they remove our obstacles for devotional service. Just that, like that should be the
I mean, you don't want to create a diversive situation in a nice home setting.
Yeah.
I've got one friend of mine, Rupa Goswami Prabhu. He's a very expert Purohit. He does all the samskaras. He does samskaras and for Hindu people and everyone. Now, let me backtrack a bit. In the Rupa Goswami's book on samskaras for pure Vaishnavas, forget the name right now, but there's a book which gives direction on performance of samskaras for Uttama Bhaktas. Yeah, and so what Gopal Bhatta Goswami, actually, forgot the author. Yeah, what he does is he directs devotees to worship different incarnations and expansions of Krishna, who are the original form of the demigods, actually. And instead, and he gives specific direction there that instead of worshipping Ganesh, Vaishnavas worship Vishvakshena, who's the commander-in-chief of the Lord's army. Yeah. And so that's the direction that Gopal Bhatta gives for Sudha Vaishnavas. Yeah. And what Rupa Goswami does is when he does his weddings for like Hindu type people, then he's actually invoking into the, into the pot to be present. He's actually invoking Vishvakshena. But he tells them, well, as far as they know, he's invoking Ganesh. Actually, he's invoking Vishvakshena, and he's worshipping Vishvakshena because so you're right. So you don't want to disturb people about this. So yeah, Ganesh is Ganesh.
Thank you, Prabhu.
All right, yeah, okay.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, please, yes.
Sorry if I can just add a little bit to what you said.
Yes,
now.
please, yes.
In South Indian Vishnu temples,
Yes.
the place of Ganesh deity, there is Vishvaksena deity. That is who
Oh,
they
really?
worship
Yeah.
first.
Oh.
That is the first offering they do. Like the first puja is done to him. Like they do Ganesh puja in other temples. In Vishnu temples, they worship Vishvaksena.
Right, great. That's wonderful. Yeah. So that's where Gopal Bhatta Goswami is taking that from as well. So, because he's actually originally a Sri Vaishnava who comes from South India. So he's given that directive to the followers of Lord Chaitanya. Yeah, to not step over the principles of pure dependence upon Krishna. Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that. Very interesting. Very interesting. Hare Krishna. All right, so let's edge on to chapter 9. Today we're trying our best to cover chapters 9 to 12. Let's see how we get on. Now just bear with me a minute. I've got to do some shifting around and get another.
Hare Krishna,
Right.
Prabhu.
Yes, please go ahead.
I have one last question, and then
Yeah.
So here I'm seeing this. Other rules are that one should not offer foodstuffs which is cooked by a non-Vaishnava. One should not worship the deity before a non-devotee. And one should not engage himself in the worship of the Lord while seeing a non-devotee. How is this? Because this is kind of tricky again in a temple situation, because anyone can come into the temple, and this is true in any temples in India, not just our little one.
Yeah. Well, generally there's different types of worship. The worship for the general public, for instance, in a temple, even in our ISKCON temples, 95%, 98% of the worship goes on behind the curtains. It goes on behind the door. The only thing you're going to see is the arti, basically.
Right.
Because of that point, it's very private, and it's and it's only for the devotee as such. So that's why it's done privately. That's why we have curtains, and that's why we dress the deities behind the curtains. That's why the kitchen is separate like that. It's to uphold that point, because it's a very
clear. Yes.
So that's followed like that,
So arti is just one aspect which is fine for non-devotees, but the actual worship is
most of the worship goes on behind curtains. Yeah, dressing, bathing, cooking, offering the bhoga, it all goes. Occasionally on festivals, you might see the worship, some other aspects of worship might be seen. Abhishek's a bit different. That's like an utsava, it's a festival. So there's more worship, you might see that.
Yeah.
Okay, so generally, you want to be careful when you're cooking for the Lord as well. That depends. It depends on you. If you're living in a house and all devotees, and they understand the principle. Yeah, because first it has to be enjoyed by Krishna. So you don't want to be. People in the West can't understand it. When they cook, they're tasting their food during the cooking. So we avoid those type of things. Is that clear? Does that help?
That's it. I will let you progress to the next.
Very interesting. Yeah, these questions are very nice. Very good. I'm happy to spend time on questions. It's very good. All right. So now let's begin chapter 9. Now I had a bit of work to do before this class today because the PowerPoint I got is all in PP and my Mac doesn't do that. So I was struggling away to try and convert it and I couldn't convert it. So what I did, I took some screenshot photos of the slides and put them onto, put them onto a keynote. So the slides might look to be a bit different. In essence, they're the same, but I've also had to add some slides because the slides, which, as I've mentioned before, I did not create these slides. And when I looked at the chapter today, there's some important points which have not been mentioned on the slides. So I've added a couple of slides, okay? So just to let you know what's going on, if you see, like, for instance, you're going to see this slide and it's not in your, if you've got your handout of slides, it's not going to be there. But don't panic. You can still, we're still going to cover chapter 9. All right, just to let you know. All right. So let's go into chapters 9 to 12. And so this again, as I mentioned, it's going to continue. Rupa Goswami is going to continue describing the 64 items of devotional service. Yeah. Now the first thing he begins with, which, as I mentioned, it's not mentioned at all in the slides which I had, but I thought it was a very important point to bring out. First thing he mentions, if you look there in chapter 9, the first title is this one here, blasphemy. Yeah. Mentioning in regards one should not tolerate blasphemy of the Lord or his devotees. So quite rightly, it's often a subject of discussion. You may have heard it. We heard the term Vaishnava Aparad in many classes. So it's a very important aspect to understand. If we want to cultivate pure devotional service, we should not be in the mood, or we should not be in the habit of blaspheming, especially the Lord or his devotees, yeah? Because the devotees are very, very dear to the Lord. So this is how Rupa Goswami begins this chapter, which is very interesting. It's not actually it's not actually a named anga, as far as I can see, but he brings this out for our edification. And there's this quote here, and this is from Bhagavatam 1074:40. My dear king, if a person after hearing blasphemous propaganda against the Lord and his devotees does not go away from the place, he becomes bereft of all pious activities. Okay. And then he goes on to describe three, let's see what is here. Now, dancing around in my slides here, it's kind of in the wrong place. Let me 1 second. I'm just going to move something around. Let's go here. Okay. And so then he begins describing 3 ways to actually deal with such insults. Okay, so if you're in a situation and someone is directly blaspheming the Lord, yeah, well, fortunately, you may not come across it so often. You may have. I remember one time on book distribution, there used to be one town that's still there, Hounslow, and there was one Indian lady, and you had to avoid her like anything, because she would come, I think she was a Jehovah's Witness or something like that, some type of Christian, and she would come and she would directly blaspheme Krishna. She would mention Krishna, all the wives he had, his pastimes. It seemed like she was aware of Krishna's Leela and pastimes, and she would, that Krishna, I'm not going to repeat it, but she would directly insult Krishna. So if the object of that day on Sankirtan was to spot her first and then go in another direction. So here, Rupa Goswami gives 3 ways. So first one, you can see here, once you become so expert that he can defeat the opposing party by argument. Okay, so that will have to be adjudged accordingly, time, place, and circumstance, you know. It may be someone is innocent and they have a wrong conception of Krishna and who he is. Yeah. So it may be just a matter of discussion and enlightening that person. Yeah. But if the person is envious and they have no agenda of opening up a discussion, then you might want to go for the last one, not the second one. Okay. Yeah. So because it says here, if one is unable to defeat the opposing party, it says that one should not just stand there meekly, but should give up their life. Okay, please don't do that one. Please don't do that one. That's just emphasizing the severity of it and how it should be avoided at all costs. Yeah. As there's one person who did that in the Srimad Bhagavatam. You get 5 points if you can name that person who gave up their life when the Vaishnava was insulted.
Sati?
Yes, correct. 5 points for that person. Who was that? Who was that who spoke then?
It's Brihat Prabhu.
We had, yes, you get 5 points to room. Yes, very interesting pastime there. We know the pastime. She wanted, was it Daksha, wasn't it? Her father, Prajapati, and there was already quite a strong disagreement between Daksha and Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva was completely composed. Anyway, you're familiar with the story in essence. So then Sati goes to a family event, and her father Daksha, knowing, having anger towards Shiva, just completely ignored her. Yeah. And so Sati became infuriated with her his disrespectful attitude towards her and her worshipful husband, Lord Shiva. So she then went into mystic type of yoga, samadhi, and she burst into flames very dramatically. Yeah, I remember there was one play at the Manor, they did this one time, a very dramatic play. Yeah, so Sati, that's one example of someone who gave up their life, because of that. So, but please don't do that. We want to go for number 3 if you can't do number 1. Yeah. The third process is followed if one is unable to execute the above mentioned 2 processes, and that he must leave the place and go away. Yeah. If a devotee does not follow any of the above mentioned 3 processes, he falls down from his position of devotion. Yeah. So, I've been in situations where I've been in I was in one situation where with senior devotees, not Prabhupada disciples, but senior to me, in a meeting about a Pacific festival, and I was called to a meeting, and the meeting turned out to be blasphemy and criticizing the particular devotee. And I really felt uncomfortable, and I wanted to leave, but I didn't, because I was junior, and what would they say? Like that, you get the picture. But I felt the effects of that. I felt the effects of it. I felt, I don't know, contaminated is the right word, but I felt my devotion wane, because I didn't leave that place and just sat there. I didn't take part in the conversation. I was a bit bewildered, but in it says here one falls down from his position of devotion. So so we want to, and I'm going to explain more, because and for instance, what it does, if you hear criticism of a devotee, the next time you see that devotee, what's going to be in your mind? That contamination of criticism, unless you're somewhat strong and you're not affected by it. So anyway, as made here by Rupa Goswami in the Nectar of Devotion. Any questions on this, you're welcome to ask. And
Murli Prabhu,
yes, please, we can go back to that. Yeah.
Coming back on the second point, should give up his life.
Yeah.
Actually, it is a sin to give up his life.
Uh-huh.
It's not recommended, basically, because one has to come back as a ghost.
Yeah, but here's a sastric injunction, which is telling you should give up your life. So that's why Dharma or sastric is very, can be very subtle, and it will change according to time, place, and circumstance. Yeah, to commit suicide is considered to be sinful, but what Sati did, for instance, wasn't sinful.
Yeah, that's right.
It was actually glorious. And she took, in the next birth, she became the husband of Shiva again. So you have to stand some of these sastric statements according to circumstance and time. And time and circumstances are always changing. So then what sastric statement stands in one place may not stand in another.
Yes.
Yeah, but we can take it it's a sure thing we can all kind of understand clearly in this present age. Then number two, it should not be an option. Otherwise, it's just easier to leave and easy to leave the place. So is that okay? But interesting you brought up that point.
Yeah, thank you.
You know? Yeah, so then Prabhupada quotes Chinada Pisa Nichina Tododa Pishishna Manina Kitana Sadahari. So for oneself, one should be very tolerant. Yeah. We should tolerate blasphemy against ourselves. Because that's the principle of a Vaishnava, is to develop utmost humility. And guaranteed, in this world, you are going to be criticized. It's guaranteed. You are going to be treated not as you should be. It's guaranteed. Unfortunately, it's the nature of this world. So, often these situations are opportunities to dig deeper in our humility. When we face these situations, it's Krishna's given us a opportunity to advance in our humility. That's how we should see it. So it's a general principle. For ourselves, we deserve it. In one sense, and we'll speak about that verse later. But if a devotee is blasphemed, that's different. We should become like fire. And here, this is why this picture here is of Jagai and Madai. So just reading here from the Nectar of Devotion. In spite of Lord Chaitanya's being so humble and meek as a devotee, when he was informed about the injuries inflicted on the body of Nityananda, he immediately ran to the spot and wanted to kill the offenders, Jagai and Madai. This behavior of Lord Chaitanya is very significant. It shows that a Vaishnava may be very tolerant and meek, foregoing everything for his personal honor, but when it is a question of honor of Krishna and his devotees, he will not tolerate any insult. Okay. So in that regard also, especially when we're preaching or engaging in conversation with others, the first point should be, is there a chance that this conversation with this person or this devotee is going to lead to some Vaishnava aparad? Yeah. And if we got a feeling it is, then we shouldn't engage in that conversation. Yeah. So we should go about our devotional service in a very intelligent way. So for instance, if there's, say, we could say devotee, as we know, is well known for criticizing devotees, then you should tactfully, nicely, don't engage in a prolonged, or don't develop a very close relationship, you just want to say Haribol, because this devotee has a tendency to criticize the temple president, the GBC, the whole of it. It was, as you know, unfortunately, this is the nature of the world, There's some people, their life and soul is to criticize ISKCON, and as you know, I won't go into details, but there's whole on the internet and things like that. Anyway, you get the picture, yeah? Okay. Blasphemy, the first point that Rupa Goswami is speaking about here in this chapter. All right. any questions on that, you're welcome to ask.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, please, Mother. Yes.
This is again technical because sometimes during our service only there will be sometimes disagreements, and it won't be blasphemy probably, but we do.
Yeah,
Yeah, there will be little nitty-gritties sometimes.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, but that's okay, and that's only to be expected. But there should be a certain line that that we shouldn't cross. You know. Yeah, we're going to have difficulties. Difficulties. There's going to be disagreements, and that's only natural. But if we maintain really respectful attitudes towards each other during that discussion of differences, then it's not a problem. But it's when it starts to become, what's it called? Ad hominem, where you actually begin to criticize the personality rather than the issues or the things, you know?
Right, yes.
Yeah. It's called ad hominem, where you attack the person.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So, yeah, we're not living. Yeah. Yes, nature of the world. We have differences of opinion, so we can discuss them. Like at the moment, I was just listening to a very nice conversation between two senior Prabhupada disciples who have differences of opinion on the women Diksha Guru issue. Yeah. And that's quite an issue. They're having a wonderful discussion. They're very respectful to each other. You know, and they're giving a different opinions. It's very nice. You know? Now, Bridge Brew, you have a question? Your hand is raised there.
Yeah, yes, Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Prabhu, sometimes, you know, I come across some devotees. They are, okay, I don't want to be critical, but yeah, sometimes they do a lot of service. They will do a lot of service.
Yeah.
And probably they will not do chanting. Probably they will not wear tulsi beads. They will not. And they will be highly critical of everything that happens in the temple or devotees and anything. You know, I tend to avoid them sometimes, but it looks like they're doing so much of service. Why should I avoid them? How do I manage this kind of situation?
They're doing so much service, so why should you avoid? Yeah, you should. I mean, it sounds like the person you're describing of, they're not chanting, and they're not sadhakas. You know, they're not practitioners as such, they're not serious practitioners, but they're doing devotional service.
Yeah.
So you just encourage them to continue devotional service, and depends on your relationship with them. Obviously, these are younger. Well, they're not. Hopefully, they're younger devotees if they're not chanting things like that. So yeah, it may not be good for you to always hang out with them. You just be tactfully avoid them, or otherwise, if you develop a relationship with them, you start to help them to see the positive side. Yeah.
Yeah.
You could help them to see how you could discuss with them how you actually see things in the temple, and they might not hear that perspective. You know? Yeah. Unfortunately, people see through the eyes of the three modes of material nature. You know, so someone's viewing everything through the glasses of the mode of ignorance. You know, so it's all negative. So sometimes it's good for those persons to hear a more Krishna conscious perspective, you know. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you, Prabhu. Thanks.
Yeah.
Murli Prabhu?
Yes. Yeah.
There's a little echo when you speak.
Yeah, I've got nothing. I've got no other. I've got no other gadgets on. I'm only speaking into this computer here. So,
okay.
What about now? Is it still there now?
No.
Now it's okay.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So let's move on a bit. Yeah. Again. Yeah. These slides kind of might not always match to the notes, but you know, try my best. So then it's spoken of the garb of a devotee, or specifically wearing, here it says adopting the outward signs of a Vaishnava. Yeah. So specifically, this is referring to how a devotee decorates his body with he or she with tilak and beads. Yeah. Vaishnav Chinna Dharanam. Yeah. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, actually, he never used to wear tulsi beads. up to one point. And he was giving lectures and having very influential in Puri. And then one Vaishnava or someone approached him and in a kind of semi-critical way, asked him why he doesn't have Tulsi Mala. And he said, because I haven't taken Diksha yet. Yeah. Then after he took Diksha, he would wear a big lot of beads, actually, 6 or 9 beads. This is a sign of a Vaishnava. Yeah. We wear neck beads and we put on tilak. Yeah. Persons who put Tulsi, there's a quote here, persons who put Tulsi beads on the neck and mark the 12 places of their body as Vishnu temples with symbolic representations. Yeah. These are Vaishnavas. And there's quotes here like persons who are decorated with tilak or gopi chand and who mark their bodies all over with the holy names of the Lord, and on whose necks and breasts there are Tulsi beads, never approach body Yamadutas. Okay. All right. So if you want to keep the Yamadutas out,
Sometimes,
yeah, Rupa, yeah.
Sometimes devotees do a nice tilak on the forehead, but then the rest of the body is simply like a little dot.
Yeah. Unfortunately, devotees get into, I could say, bad familiar habits. You know, it's like sometimes you see people in Tesco's and they're stamping the items with a price tag. Sometimes devotees put on. Very quick. Yeah, so we should watch that. It's a very, put it on tilak. I mean, I like to sit down and put on tilak, and I kind of approach it as a meditation. It's the first worship of the day for a Vaishnava, where you're invoking the Lord's holy name upon your body. So it's a sacred act. So we don't want to. So I guess you could say there's 3 modes of nature, and there's putting on tilak in a mode of goodness, there's putting on tilak in a mode of passion, and there's putting on tilak in a mode of ignorance, So we should try and do it nicely. And if we have got into bad habits, let's stop, look, as they used to say for crossing the road, stop, look, and think what we're doing and do it nicely. Om Keshavaya Namah, Om Narayana Namah, Om Madhavaya Namah. Yeah, it's the holy names of the Lord. Yeah. But it's unfortunately, I think sometimes I'm in a habit of that. I don't make the tilak signs very nice on my arms. I should put a bit more into it. All right. So there's Vaishnava Chinatharana, accepting the outward signs of a Vaishnava. Now this isn't. It's checking the time. I always get tempted to give too many details and everything, but this is not just something external. It's not just if, say, a simple person buys a pair of neck beads and then that's it. Yamaraj is not going to come. No, people who put neck beads, and this is the idea, people who put neck beads on and decorate their face with tilak, they are Vaishnavas. Yeah, if a non-Vaishnava tries to cheat the Lord and put it, you can't cheat the Lord. You can't take this quote, it's all right, I can act in any way I like, I just put on some Tulsi neck beads and that's it. No. This means this is what Vaishnavas do. And Vaishnavas follow Krishna and his shiksha. Right? So anyway, and then Prabhupada speaks about the Yamadutas there a little bit, the lords of death, and that they never come to see the Vaishnavas, and that's mentioned in regards to Ajamul, the Ajamul Skanda, the Ajamul Leela. As we know the story, I won't go into details. Ajamul was saved by the Yamadutas, and they after they was given the instruction to don't ever go near Vaishnavas. And how they tell a Vaishnava, because they decorate their body with tilak and Tulsi neck beads. So a good, I guess, your specific own personal practice where you wear tilak. I won't get into that, but as much as possible, we should try and wear it. Some of you, it might not be possible in some situations, but as much as possible, especially neck beads, we can always wear. All right. So Harinam, let's see what else he said. Harinam Skaradharanam. You mentioned that to wear the letters of the Holy Lord's holy name. Here's a Harinam t-shirt. But generally, Vaishnavas, you can buy symbols, and they stamp the signs of Vishnu upon their arm. It was done traditionally in the Sri Vaishnavas. Niyamalya Dharanam. It's mentioned here to accept the remnants of articles used by the deity, like flower garlands, etc. We should always, like Uddhava always would wear the Niyamalya of Krishna. Yeah, his clothes, he would look, in that sense, he looked like Krishna. When he first came to Vrindavan, they thought it was Krishna because he was wearing the Niyamalya, the articles used by Krishna. Yeah. All right. And there's a quote here. Simply by decorating themselves with garlands, fragrant oils, clothes, and ornaments that have already the Lord is enjoyed, and by eating the remnants of your meals, we, your servants, will indeed conquer the illusory energy. Yeah. And this is actually from Uddhava, actually, 11th canto, Uddhava to Krishna. Yeah. This was Uddhava's habit. Nice habit. He would always get the remnants of Krishna. And he carry himself with his clothes and everything. Yeah. So, yeah, so don't be shy about putting on Maha garlands. Yeah. If we see Maha garland, we should put it on. It gets special mercy, you know. It's mentioned that if we follow those things, then it'll help us to conquer the spell of the material energy. Yeah. Putting on garlands, etc. It will help us to conquer the material energy. Not that we can conquer in the sense we can, but the material energy will look kindly upon us. Yeah. And it's mentioned at the time of death, for such a person will are not visited by Yamaraj, mentioned again. Yeah. All right. Now, is there any questions about that you can ask? I think we're all familiar with that, putting on tilak. And yeah, so again, just remember that Rupa Goswami is now telling us how to be a devotee, what we actually do. So even to the extent of what we look like, you know, neck beads, tilak, you know, it's instruction. This is how we should, this is what we should do. Yeah. Of course, some situations, preaching situations, if you're preaching in a Muslim country, then you might have to go like that, put neck beads like that, hide them when you go through customs. Yeah, so time, place, and circumstance, but this is the general rule. Okay. So then now here, these are from Angas 23 to 42. It's directly in relationship to the deity, as most of these are actually. Last chapter was, but here we got accepting flower garlands. We should dance before the deity. Okay, that's the regulative principle. You have to dance before the deity. Yeah, of course you can dance according to your nature. You don't have to. You know, you might not have the energy. Depends. You know, but anyway, you should dance. We should move. Yeah, dance before the deity, Krishna, and we're dancing for Krishna's pleasure. Yeah, however that might be. Yeah, simple Swami step, whatever. Yeah. Our movement is about dancing. Yeah, dancing for the Lord, dancing in Sankirtan. Yeah, bowing down in honor of the deity. We're all familiar with that. We come in the temple, standing up to receive the Lord. This is referring to, in some temples, then the Lord will, the Utsav deities will come and go on a palanquin and be taken around somewhere. Like if you go to Mayapur, every Saturday, I think, they do the Hasti, the elephant procession, and the Radha Madhav small deities come. Those who've been to Mayapur, you've seen that. It's common in South India. Deities will come out and go on procession. So when they come, you should stand up and receive the Lord. You know, the Lord is coming. So we should respect that. Yeah. Yes. I've been in Mayapur before when Jagannath comes, and it's very nice. You should whatever you're doing, you should go to the bow, or wherever you are, go and bow down, stand up to receive the Lord. And you should follow along as well. Follow along, you should follow the deity. If the deity is moving, yeah, we follow the Lord. Going to the temple, and then Prabhupada's giving more details here. You can read if you like in your own time. I think he speaks there about in Vrindavan, there's many temples, and most of you perhaps who've been to Vrindavan, and certain times in the day, then there's hundreds of people going in hundreds of directions and all going to all the temples in Vrindavan. It's pretty ecstatic, you know. They're going for darshan in what is that, Jaipur, for Radha Govinda. That's what Jaipur are, yeah. It's very ecstatic. There's like a stampede. There's a massive stampede of humanity rushing to get darshan before the curtains close, before they go to work. Yeah. And they do this every day for like their whole lives, you know, 60, 70 years, they will come and take darshan of the Lord. Yeah. So if we happen to be living adjacent or close to a temple, it's nice. We should do that. Something in the chat here. Bridge is mentioning dancing in front of the deities. I was told in Harshana, if one dances in front of the deities, they wouldn't need to dance in front of Maya or material desire. Yeah, that's nice. Did you get that? If we dance before the deities, then we won't be forced to dance by the illusory material energy. Yeah, let's dance before Krishna. Yeah, or otherwise we'll be dancing enslaved to our material desires. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Bridge. Very nice. Yeah, Bridge Prabhu. All right, so circumambulating the temple. Some temples have that facility. You can here, or here, not here in South, but in central London, you can do that. You have to walk around the block though. But temples, they will have that facility in India, Mayapur, Vrindavan, they have that. Render some service. I think Prabhupada speaks about that here in this chapter. Yes, find some. We are servants of Krishna. Servants of Krishna mean we have some service. Yeah, that's what it means to be a servant. So we should be engaged in some type of service to the Lord. Yeah, and there's many opportunities for that. There's no shortage of service opportunities. Yeah, servants means we have a service. So Prashadam, we're all into that one. Yeah, but taking Prashadam, it's a regulative principle. Drinking Charnarita. Yeah, we've gone to 31 to 37. The other ones, 32 to 36, we will be describing separately, okay? Charnarita, smelling incense and flowers offered to deities. Touching the deity is specifically for Brahminic, those who have Brahmin initiation. Yeah, they can address the Lord, etc. And observing the arti. Yeah, you get the same, describe that you get the same benefit as the person offering the arti. Just by watching it, you get the same benefit. Yeah, and you're actually engaged in deity worship by just watching the devotee, the priest do the arti. Yeah, you're actually engaged in deity worship. Yeah. So any questions about those? It's a quick kind of summary of these items. Yeah. Hopefully we're familiar with all of these, isn't it? Hopefully we are. This is part of our life. Yeah, doing all of these things. Yeah. So yeah, we want to fill up our life with these things. You know? So specifically mentioned here, Anga 33 is very important for us. It's Sankirtan. Yeah. Yeah, so devotees, what do? We loudly chant the glories of the Lord's activities, yeah? Well, loudly we chant the Lord's holy name in, say, for instance, Harinam Sankirtan, but we'll speak about that a little bit later as well. We devotees, what do devotees do? They speak about that person who they're devoted to, yeah? And his qualities, his form and pastimes, yeah, So Srimad Bhagavatam class is all about the Lord, his Leela, his pastimes, and his activities. So that's called Sankirtan, yeah? Bhagavatam, Sankirtan. So Sankirtan, also mentioned here, refers to congregational chanting of the holy name of the Lord, yeah? We have a private little bhajan in our japa, and it's so nice when we all get together, yeah? Sankirtan, we all get together, and together we cry out to the Lord, yeah, for his mercy, for his pleasure, yeah. Could call it, yeah, we all, yeah, and then there's the more chance, you could say in one sense, more chance of getting the Lord's attention if you're in Sankirtan and we're all dancing together. It pleases the Lord very much. As you know, it's the Yuga Dham, yeah. And there's a quote here, just, have I got it the next slide? Let me just check. Yeah, so this is where I'm adding a few slides here. It's going to go here. There's two quotes here, one from the Vishnu Dharma, one from directly from Chaitanya Charitamrita. Unfortunately, the specifics of the verse is not given. Anyway, my dear king, this word Krishna is so auspicious that anyone who chants his holy name immediately gets rid of the resultant actions of sinful activities for many, many births. And Chaitanya Charitamrita, a person who chants the holy name of Krishna once can counteract the resultant actions of more sinful activities than he is able to perform. So pretty spectacular, isn't it? Pretty amazing. Yeah. Of course, it will depend upon the quality of your chanting. That's to be understood. Yeah. But whatever, it's going to have its effects. Yeah. Yeah. And there's also quoted here, Prahlad Maharaj, my dear Lord Nrsimha, if I can be elevated to the position of your servant, then it will be possible for me to hear about your activities. You are the supreme friend, the supreme worshipful deity. Your pastimes are transcendental, and simply by hearing them, one can counteract all his sinful activities. Therefore, I shall not care for all those sinful activities, because simply by hearing about your pastimes, I shall get out of all the contamination of material attachment. Yeah. Our only hope is the Sankirtan of the Lord's names. Yeah. So we should very much, whenever an opportunity arises, we should be very happy to engage in Sankirtan, to chant the glories of the Lord. You know. And interesting is also well that here Prabhupada mentions there are many songs about the Lord's activities. I say interesting because he mentions one of the songs of the Lord's activities is the Narada Pancharatra. It's interesting because that's very detailed philosophical dissertation on the practice of many things. It speaks about the expansions of the Lord, but a large part of it is about the details of worship. But interesting, Prabhupada calls it a song about the Lord's activities. And he quotes Srimad Bhagavatam, Brahma Samhita. Yeah. So Prabhupada mentions these songs. We have the songs of Narottam Das Thakur, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, so many other wonderful Vaishnavas, so many wonderful nectar, so much wonderful songs. Some of these bhajans or prayers are coming down from millions of years, Prabhupada describes, yeah. So, and we can take advantage of them. And then another quote, this time from Narada Muni. My dear Vyas, you should know that persons are engaged in executing austerities and penances, studying the Vedas, performing big sacrifices, chanting the hymns of the Vedas, speculating on transcendental knowledge, and performing charitable functions, have for all their auspicious activities simply to gain a place in the association of devotees and chant the glories of the Lord. It is indicated here that chanting about and glorifying the Lord is the ultimate activity of the living entity. Yeah, so that's the ultimate Dharma as a jiva, part and parcel of the Lord. Now, ultimate, therefore, happiness is to engage in hearing and glorifying the Lord. There's one verse that comes to mind in the Srimad Bhagavatam, where Sukadeva Goswami, forget the Sanskrit, but he's imploring Maharaj Parikshit. He says to him that simply by chanting the glories of the Lord, it can counteract all the sinful activities of the whole world. So he says to him, my dear king, please take this seriously. Because if you, the king, take it seriously, everyone else will take it seriously. Yeah? Just by chanting the holy names of the Lord. We cannot, it's unestimable the potency of the Harinam Sankirtan, for instance, that we, in London we go out as much as possible every day. The effect that's having, and the Harinam going on in temples or in places throughout the world it's the saving grace of this Kali Yuga, yeah, is the Harinam Sankirtan. Okay. And so, yeah, that was about Sankirtan. Is there any additions to that, please, if you have any questions? Sankirtan Yagnaki Jai. Yeah, that's our life and soul, is Sankirtan. Yeah. So then he speaks about here, this is another addition slide, okay, because this wasn't in the slide. So I thought, wow, how can you miss this? This is it's there in Nectar of Devotion. So it's very, very interesting point here. So he speaks about the process of submission, or the mentality of Trinadapi Sunechena. This is the mood of a devotee in their approaching the Lord. He mentions submission. Yeah. So 3 types Rupa Goswami mentions: Sampatana Atmika, Dhanya Bodhika, Lalasha Mayi. So the first one, Sampatana Atmika, probably pronounced that wrong, but very feelingly offering prayers. Yeah. Now this technically, in a real sense of the term, it's a prayer for awakening emotion or devotion for the Lord, or bhava. Yeah. Feelingly offering prayers. Yeah. Okay, but whatever it may be, the actual definition is that, but we should be in a habit of praying to the Lord. Yeah. But we learn how to pray to the Lord. Yeah. When we hear about pure devotees and how they pray. Yeah. We've taken up the path of Uttam Bhakti. We've been initiated, or may or may not be, but we're on the path of devotional service. So we're learning to pray. So we pray in the mood as do the unadulterated devotees of the Lord. So generally they pray, what for? As Rupa Goswami mentions, we pray for instance, we just was speaking about Sankirtan. So pray for, Rupa Goswami prays to have millions of tongues, so we can chant the holy name, we can relish it, millions of ears. Yeah. So we should pray as the pure devotees do. Yeah. Of course, it's also mentioned by Bhagavatam that whatever you want in this world, even if it's material things, you should go to Krishna. Yeah. That verse, can't think of it now, but in the Bhagavatam describes, if you're full of material desires, you have no material desires, or you're desiring moksha, then you should go to Krishna. But upon the association of Vaishnavas and hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, then we get the idea. No, let's pray for our ultimate well-being, which is to be engaged in Lord's service. So anyway, so here is expressing one's heartfelt desire for spontaneous devotional service. Okay. We want to, we don't want to do it mechanically. We want to do it because our hearts are relishing. Yeah. Anyway, so that's one, Sampratanatika. And then he gives there's a nice description here, the verse which exemplifies this. You can see it there in the next devotion. My Lord, I know that young girls have natural attraction for young boys, and young boys have natural attraction for young girls. I am praying at your lotus feet that my mind may become attracted unto you in the same spontaneous way. Yeah. So Prabhupada mentions this is very appropriate. Yeah. He mentions that when a young boy sees a young girl, then there's natural attraction. So that's called raga nuga. Yeah. Unfortunately, we have raga nuga for the wrong thing. We want raga nuga for Krishna. Yeah. So there's, yeah. So Prabhupada mentions, like, without any training, there's a natural attraction. You mentioned due to the sex impulse. So probably that's a material example. So one devotee is praying, let me be attracted to you in that same natural way. Yeah, free of any desire for any profit, because that's business. Yeah, and let there be no other cause. Yeah? So this is an example of very feelingly offering prayers. Then the next one, Danya Bodhika. So, yeah, expressing one's insignificance before the deity. Yeah, there's actually a lot of shelter and a lot of realization, or there's a lot of shelter and peace to be had in contemplating our insignificance compared to Krishna. Yeah. Jayadvaita Swami, many years back, he did this interesting seminar in Radhadesh. It was at a time when some things were entering, some moods were entering the devotees' talk, etc., from the material world about, the material world, you can do it, you can make it, you should feel good about yourself, you should, the type of materialistic mindset, you can conquer the world, you can achieve anything you want, be that type of mood. So he did this seminar, and the title of it was How to Feel Bad About Yourself. Of course, that should be understood with intelligence as well. We don't want to, I'm not trying to encourage where we, glorify the mode of ignorance where we don't feel like doing anything. But you get the idea here, is that we are very small, we are very insignificant. And so we should be in that mood when we're praying to the Lord, humbly submitting ourselves. Yeah. And there's a prayer that exemplifies that, that's given in the Padma Purana again. My dear Lord, there is no sinful living entity who is more a sinner than myself, nor is there a greater offender than myself. I am so greatly sinful and offensive that when I come to confess my sinful activities before you, I am ashamed. Yeah. So this is heartfelt. It may not be so easy to do depends, in the beginning stages, but one of the aspects of devotional service is because it's so pure, then everything becomes revealed, even the nature of our conditioning. Prabhupada mentions that in the book called The Path of Perfection, about chanting the holy name. Everything becomes revealed. That means all the dirt within becomes revealed. Yeah. So what should we do? We should pray to the Lord. Yeah. In this type of, my dear Lord, just see the dirt in my heart. Just see my position. Yeah. And I'm trying to achieve the highest thing. How am I possibly going to achieve that with this dirt in my heart? Yeah. We pray to the Lord. Yeah? We submit our precarious state before the Lord. Yeah. Helpless, our precarious, helpless state before the Lord. Danya Bodhika. So Rupa Goswami has mentioned, this is the mood of a Vaishnava. Yeah. Yeah, just reading here. He mentions this as a natural position for a devotee. Yeah. Anyway, Prabhupada goes on. We don't want to. There's more. He gives more details there. Now, this last one is interesting. Lalashamayi. This is one is desiring some specific spiritual perfection. Now, this comes at more advanced stage. Yeah, this is at the stage of bhava and beyond. Yeah, the different stages in bhava, where one has a very strong intuitive understanding of their relationship with Krishna. But they haven't been gifted with being able to act in that relationship, but they understand what it is. Yeah, it's been revealed to them. Yeah, so it's been revealed to them. So intuitively, they can relate very much to a specific relationship with Krishna. But because they're not at the stage of prema, they cannot enter into that relationship. Yeah. So this is what it means by Lala Sha Mayi. Then they desire, and this is what it means, desire in a perfectional stage. And Prabhupada mentions there to be established in one of the four relationships with Krishna. Yeah. And this mood literally burns the devotee 24 hours a day. Yeah, and this you can read in the prayers of Norton Das Thakur, yeah, and other great Vaishnavas. Their prayers are in this mood. And there's one book called the Vilapa Kushmanjali by Raghunath Das Goswami. There's very much this, the whole book is he's praying to be re-established in his position as Radharani's maidservant. And so that's Lalasa Mayi, right? Desiring some perfectional stage. Yeah. And I think Prabhupada mentions here he mentions at the end he mentions, in other words, one should learn how to cry for the Lord. Yeah. Prabhupada mentions, let's just read it, it's very nice. In other words, one should learn how to cry for the Lord. One should learn this small technique, and they should be very eager and actually cry to become engaged in some particular type of service. This is called lolyam, and such tears are the price for the highest perfection. All right. So we've got to start somewhere. So we cry for the ability to cry, for the ability to cry for the Lord. Yeah. So submission, these three items is mentioned here. So I thought it was very poignant that we include these. Very interesting. All right, it's just hit 2 o'clock. So we can stop here for a little while. Can we convene again at 2:15? So, okay, it's 2:01, so 40 minutes we can get together again, okay? Everyone's into that?
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay, Hari, see you in 2:15 and we continue with chapter 10, okay? Hare Krishna. Hare Bol. Krishna. Okay, a few more seconds left to 2:15. We'll give you. We start. Okay, 2:15. Time to continue swimming in the nectar of devotion, in the ways of devotion. Yeah, great. Good if some people can put their camera on, at least they can. There's some. It's good for me. So anyway, Rupanuga, I can see his big smiling face. That's good. Yeah, I just one point before we begin. Last week I managed to mark the essays which I had received, or at least the first essay. So I think there was a few I haven't received yet. So just encourage devotees, if you can submit your essays, that would be good to help me, rather than I get them all of them all at the end, and then I have to sit down and mark them all. But anyway, thank you for those who have submitted your essays. Generally, they're very good. Most of you have got all the main points. The first essay is about Tatashta Lakshan and Swarup Lakshan. Very, very impressed, actually. You're doing very well. I think everyone I marked, I didn't give a low. I think everyone did 7 and above, I think, which is a pass, at least for that little aspect. So very good, thank you. Encourage those who haven't done yet, please do.
I didn't get any marks, Prabhu. I just said I didn't get any marks. Did you actually give marks?
Okay, yeah, let me check that one.
Okay.
Yashaswini, isn't it, Mataji? Yeah, okay, okay, I should double check that in my inbox, but because you submitted your essay, but you didn't get any reply back at all?
I got a reply, but it didn't give me marks. It just says,
okay.
thank you, all points covered, but no marks.
Okay, my mistake. I forgot to put your mark in, so I will do that. Thank you. Krishna, let me just note that down before I forget it. So, 1 second. Shashvini. Yes, Krishna Gopal, you had your hand raised.
Yes, Prabhu. I submitted my essay, but I've not received the mark, no feedback.
Really? I definitely marked your essay.
Oh,
so I'll check that as well.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Same situation? Okay.
I haven't received anything either, Prabhu.
Suraj. Okay, I better. Anyone else? I thought I did them all. Suraj, I definitely marked your essay.
Thank you.
I can recognize your name. Yeah, okay, so I'll look into that.
Thank you.
Shri Krishna Gopal and Suraj, yeah. All right. Okay, let's dive into chapter 10. So we should today, I mean, we're doing quite well. I'm hoping to get to, let's see. My goal is to get to chapter 12 today. Well, let's see how we go. So with chapter 10 is techniques of hearing and remembering, which is very interesting. That's a basic occupation as devotees, hearing. It's very interesting examples of remembering. So that's what Rupa Goswami covers here. Again, he's continuing to give evidences for the 64 angas of sadhana bhakti. Yeah. And incidentally, these angas are still practiced at Raganuga bhakti, but they're done with a different mood. Yeah. So here we're doing them because Rupa Goswami is telling us to do them. Yeah. More spontaneous mood, you're automatically doing these things. So we're going to hear about these 4 principles: hearing, expecting the Lord's mercy, smaranam, and meditating. So remembering and meditating, This is more the internal, you could say, in some aspects. We heard about the external, being adorned as a devotee. We also heard about some of the internal developments in the mood of submission. So here that's going to look at that more, the inner world of a Vaishnava, which is very important. Yeah. So there's different ways to hear about Krishna. Nam Shravana. So we hear the name, always from Hare Krishna. We hear that, yeah. Then also to hear about the Lord's pastimes. Chalita Shravana. Yeah, so many wonderful pastimes. Krishna appears so we can speak about his pastimes. That's the idea why he comes to earth, to give us something to speak about rather than speaking about mundane things, you know. Like today is difficult, isn't it? Often conversations go into COVID Qatar. we want Krishna Qatar. Yeah. So hear about Krishna's pastimes. That's another aspect, different way of hearing about Krishna. And hearing about his qualities. Gunadi Shravana. Yeah. And Nectar of Devotion will definitely describe his pastimes. Different examples will be given in latter chapters of the Raj pastimes. But there's one chapter, there's two chapters which are directly connected to hearing about the Lord's qualities. And that's not covered in our study here. We got to chapter 19. Chapter 20 is all about Krishna's qualities. All right. So there's 3 types of hearing mentioned there. So there's a reference here from the Garuda Purana, or there you can see page 89 to 90. Let's just check my slides here. So the first stage then is Shravanam, yeah, is hearing. And Prabhupada gives this as Prabhupada's principle is everyone should get an opportunity to come and join, he says, the party. Yeah. Everyone wants to be invited to a party, isn't it? Or at least we used to. But to join a devotional party, yeah, and what do we do there? Not what materialistic people do in their parties, but we hear. Yeah, we're having a devotional party. We're going to hear about Krishna. We're going to hear about Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We're going to hear about, once a year, we can hear about Radharani. Yeah, we're going to hear about Krishna's pastimes. Like, what's the festival coming up soon? What's our next festival that's rolling up?
Kartik.
Kartik, Govardhan.
Yeah, Kartik. Yeah, very nice. And we're going to hear about Damodar. Yeah, very sweet pastime. And then in the month of Kartik, we have
Giri Govardhan.
Govardhan Puja. Yeah. So we're going to hear about that wonderful pastime, that wonderful Leela. We're going to have a big party. Big party. So Prabhupada mentions this is all part of, it's very important so that we can actually, this is how we progress. Yeah. From the question, how can I make advancement? How can I make it? You have to open your ears and hear about Krishna. Yeah. Go to the Sangha of Vaishnavas and hear about Krishna. Yeah. Prabhupada says one who links their ears to the transcendental sound vibration. Yeah. That's how we become, Prabhupada mentions, we can become quickly purified. Yeah. Sometimes the question is asked of someone, how is that devotee make so much advancement so quickly, you know? Well, it might be the simple answer is that he spends more time hearing than what we do. He just spends more time hearing and chanting about the Lord. It may be as simple as that. It may come from a previous life also. Yeah. But yeah, so we all know, we're all learning this, how to hear more, you know. These days we have quite good opportunity. We have little gadgets we can plug in our ears on the tube or the train or whatever we're doing and hear. So Prabhupada mentions it's very important for becoming purified, yeah, and to clean the heart, yeah. And as we know that Lord Gauranga, Jetotapanam Hajanam, and his principle of cleansing the heart, yeah. Then he mentions that we can gain adhikar, qualification for entering into devotional service. Yeah, it's just hearing. Yeah. Even if we think we've heard the same thing, oh, I've heard this before, we keep hearing. Yeah, we should take the medicine, keep hearing. And then that's what's amazing about devotional practice, or these topics about Krishna. As the heart becomes more cleansed, we can see more. We can see more of, enter into more of the deeper meaning. And the more you enter, the more you see, or the bigger it gets. You understand? So it's like, yeah, so the more we hear, the more we get qualified to hear, the more we want to hear, and the more. Yeah. So there's a quote from the Guru Purana. I'll just read it here. The state of conditional life in the material world is just like a man lying unconscious, who's been bitten by a snake. He gives this example here. This could be a question, What is the example of a snake that's given in the, is it 9th chapter or 10th chapter? Chapter 1, yeah. This chapter. Yeah, this is because let me just read it. The state of conditioned life in the material world is just like that of a man lying unconscious, having been bitten by a snake. This is because both such unconscious states can be ended by the sound of a mantra. Yeah, that's quite mystical. I don't know if anyone's seen that, if you come from India or experienced that, where someone gets bitten by a snake and the snake charmer says a mantra and that they become cured. Yeah, Prabhupada speaks of it as if it was a daily occurrence in his, in his life. Yeah, at least Rupa Goswami is mentioning. When a man is snake bitten, he does not die immediately, but becomes unconscious and remains in a comatose condition. Yeah, so he compares that. Anyone who is in the material world is also sleeping, because they're ignorant of their actual position as a servant of the Lord. They're in a sleeping state. Yeah, they may look like they're awake, but they're sleeping. Yeah, so that's why, because they've been bitten by the snake of Maya. Yeah, so Prabhupada says they're almost dead. Yeah, he hasn't got much to say about the materialistic person. They're almost dead. Yeah, because they have no Krishna consciousness. So then he gives the example that just like a man who's been bitten by a snake, as I mentioned, it can chant some mantra. Yeah, and apparently it brings people to their feet again. It kind of revives them from a comatose condition. So obviously Prabhupada nicely here then brings in chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Yeah, to awake from the deadly conscious state of materialistic life. Yeah. Then there's a quote from Sukadeva Goswami. He speaks to Maharaj Parikshit. This is from the 4th canto, chapter 29, text 40. My dear king, one should stay at a place where the great acharyas speak about the transcendental activities of the Lord, and one should give oral reception to the nectarian river flowing from the moonlight faces of such great personalities. If someone eagerly continues to hear such transcendental sounds, then certainly he or she will become freed from all material hunger, thirst, fear, and lamentations, as well as all illusions of material existence. Yeah, so this was very much exemplified by Maharaj Parikshit, as verses where he describes that although I am fasting, and it's indeed very difficult to fast. I think he was also not taking any liquids, fasting, but simply by hearing the nectar coming from your mouth, Sukadeva Goswami is speaking of, then for me, it's not difficult at all. There's no bashad. Imagine that, no bashad. Yeah, how much absorbed is Maharaj Parikshit in hearing from Sukadeva Goswami? Yeah, normally when we give class, normally the class comes before bashadam normally, and generally if some devotees, they get agitated if too many questions are being asked because the prashad is next, and you have to be careful when you're giving class, because you go over time too much, you see devotees, they want to eat prasad, yeah, which is only nice, is prasad. But the only prasad that Maharaj Parikshit was having was Sukadeva Goswami's glorification of Krishna. Yeah, so he was a practical example, becoming free, literally, of material hunger and thirst, yeah, and all fear and lamentation, just by hearing from Sukadeva Goswami. Yeah. So then it's mentioned that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has recommended this as a means of self-realization in the age of Kali. Yeah, yeah. And there's more. And then Prabhupada mentions that hearing from professional men will not help. What does he mean by that? Generally, he means the Bhagavat Saptaha, the recital of Bhagavatam given by materialistic persons who are not sadhakas. Yeah, it's not uncommon. Like in India, if someone's gonna start a new business, or they're gonna have a wedding or some function, they will hire someone to come and speak Bhagavatam for the occasion of the opening of the new shoe factory. They'll invite everyone to come, and they give Bhagavata Saptaha. Now, this person speaking Bhagavata Saptaha is on more cases than not, is not a sadhaka. Some of them don't even believe in the divinity of Krishna. It is solely an occupation for them. Yeah. So such hearing will not have its effect. Yeah. Like Prabhupada, someone give example, they're doing Bhagavad Saptaha, then afterwards they're smoking bidi and eating all nonsense and doing all types, you know. So that's what he means there. But hearing from a professional person will not help. We have to hear from sadhakas, from those who are practicing devotion. Yeah. And he meant, yeah. And he says here, then the nectarian rivers, like those which are flowing on the moon planet, will flow into our ears. Nice, no? Flow into our ears. So probably this is a metaphor that's used. And there's more, you know, I won't read the whole chapter, the whole everything, it would take too long. But Prabhupada refers there, when Krishna speaks on the battlefield of Kuru, etc., it appears like two persons simply talking between two friends, but no, it's actually a river of nectar that's flowing from the mouth of Krishna. And that's how often devotees will describe. You'll see many verses that give that description of hearing. It's like nectar. So that means it's enlivening to the self. It brings one to life, and it is enjoyable. Dare I say the word? We're supposed to enjoy. But this is what we're supposed to enjoy. Krishna Katha. Yeah. So let's see. Now then, the next one is expecting the Lord's mercy, and this is based on the verse, a well-known verse from Lord Brahma. I think it's 10:14:8. Taten kompom shushikshamano bundana ev atman kritam vipakam written vak papobe vidadan namaste jivita yo mukti pada saya bak. So very important verse. Prabhupada explains, I think it's here, he explains, this should be the guide of all devotees. Yeah. And translation to that verse is, my dear Lord, any person who is constantly awaiting your causeless mercy to be bestowed upon him, and who goes on suffering the resultant reactions of his past misdeeds, offering you respectful obeisances from the core of his heart, is surely eligible to become liberated, for it has become his rightful claim. Yeah. Yeah, so Rupa Goswami, first of all, he's mentioning that he mentions there are two ways to practice Krishna consciousness in adverse situations. Yeah. Anyone faced any adverse situations? Anyone out there? No. Sometimes life is like an adverse situation. There's all these different challenges. Yeah. Santosh, Baba, you have your hand up there?
No, I just raised my hand. Yes.
Oh, raise your hand, yeah.
Faced a difficult situation.
Okay, yeah. So it has some, yeah. So interesting, we describe, what do you do? Yeah. Well, here we accept the reactions as the Lord's mercy. Yeah, and it's quite deep actually. It's quite you could say it's it's a very kind of elevated state of God consciousness. Yeah. Is to not blame or be bitter towards the Lord or to others when we're in a difficult situation. Often that's the first reflex of us or of conditioned souls, is to look outwards to the cause of our misfortune. But actually, better look inwards. Yeah. Because as you know, it's by dint of our specific activities, yeah, that we are facing the different varieties in our life, you know, some good, some bad. Yeah. We are the architects, you know, of our own situation. Yeah. There's I mentioned before, but in the Mahabharata describes this quite often, because you know the Pandavas, or it's often they're inquiring from sages and they're in an adverse situation. So different sages give different there's lots of conversations on this point of of activities, or why one is experiencing adverse and situations and how to deal with it and how to understand it. And there's one conversation where it describes, it gives details of karma. So let's say, for instance, someone, I think I mentioned this before, because we have relieving all sinful reactions, but you know, that if someone commits a sinful activity, a specific sin at the age of 24, then in the next life, at the age of 24, it will come to him. And it goes on to describe very poetically that just as a calf will find its mother in a massive herd of cows, you know, it will find its mother. So similarly, the reactions of our previous activities will come and seek us out, will find us, just the same as a calf finds its mother amongst a big herd of cows, you know. But so how do we react? Well, in that situation, yeah. Here, where it says here, yeah, we go on, you know, we have to suffer our lot, so to speak, understanding that it's due to our past misdeeds. But we don't have any, this is the point here, if we have that mentality, then we're not going to be blaming the Lord or blaming the universe or blaming the next door neighbor or blaming the husband or blame whatever you want to be. You know, we actually, then there's room in the heart to continue, and it mentions here from the core of the heart, to continue offering respectful obeisances to Krishna. Yeah. Or could say this applies to all different persons who are practicing some form of God consciousness, Christians or Muslims, or whatever it may be. You know, we should understand that this is all, everything we're experiencing. Prabhupada, another place, he says, we should unhesitatingly accept all difficulties as the mercy of the Lord. Yeah, unhesitatingly. So that often is not so easy. But my dear Lord, so he says, any person who is constantly awaiting your causeless mercy to be bestowed upon him, who goes on suffering the result of actions of his past misdeeds, offering a respectful basis from the core of his heart, is certainly eligible to become liberated. Yeah, for it to become their rightful claim. Yeah, Dayapak, you get the inheritance, yeah? So you just have to, just like a son or a daughter just has to stay alive in order to receive the inheritance, say, of the parents. So if we can execute our devotional activities in this mood, you'll inherit automatically the right to go back to the abode of the Lord. Yeah. Any questions about that? Yeah, so we shouldn't expect, sometimes this is a misunderstanding when you take up spiritual life or you take up chanting Hare Krishna, that we expect immediate relief from everything. It doesn't work like that, you know. We still may have to go through some of the residue reactions of our previous activities. Yeah, that's what it means in material existence. Yeah, yeah. So what do? Matra spasista kuntaya shitoshna sukha dukata agama paninitas tam titiksha bharata. Oh, son of butter, just tolerate. Yeah. Yeah, just reading through here the chapter here on this point. Let's just read this part here, which Prabhupada says, if the devotee passes his days in that spirit, it is certain that he is going to be promoted to the abode of the Lord. By such activities, he earns his claim to enter the kingdom of God. The exact word used in this verse is Dayabak. Dayabak refers to his sons becoming the lawful inheritor of the property of the father. In a similar way, a pure devotee who is prepared to undergo all kinds of tribulations in executing Krishna conscious duties becomes lawfully qualified to enter into the transcendental abode. So that's also why this point may not be the immediate internal disposition of a devotee when they face difficult situations. Therefore, we need the association of devotees, you know. So sometimes very, very difficult situations we're faced with, you know, and we may not be on this immediate level, be able to fold our hands and accept it, as it may seem so unfair and so unjust. We think, how is it possible? It's so unfair. Yeah. So then we have to speak to Vaishnavas, you know, and it may take some time in some situations before we understand the import of this verse. But when we do, at that time, where all the anxiety will just disappear, like the fog disappears when the sun rises in the morning. Yeah. So yeah, because devotees do go through some very trying situations, you know. Yeah. Sometimes their children die, sometimes they get disease, sometimes they get cancer, all types of things, you know. Sometimes the devotees, I was reminded, I heard that before, but some devotees' children commit suicide. They were saying, you know, and they're devotee children. I heard it the other day. This happened years ago in Mayapur. You know, some very, you know, very difficult, trying situations. Yeah, but at the end of the day, this is the mood of a devotee, and they continue. Yeah, they continue. Whatever happens, they pick up their beads. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare. Yeah, this is a devotee. You know, they don't pick up the beads and throw them across the room. It's not fair, Krishna. I'm not going to chant your rounds again. No, we pick up our beads and we pray to understand, to be, you know, we pray to Krishna. All right. Should we move on to another slide? Yes. Yes. Okay. Hare Krishna. Nice verse to learn. Okay. 10:14:8. Tatena kompom shukshamano. Yeah. So then now Rupa Goswami is going to explain Smriti and Dhyanam. Yeah, Smriti means remembrance. Dhyanam is a word for meditation. Now, Savai Mada Krishna Pada Vindayo, as we all know, the mind is very fickle, and it must be perhaps it must be the most trying and difficult aspect of devotional service, is to keep our mind in a continuous relationship with Krishna. It's not so easy, but doing that, to remember Krishna, is a part of our devotional development. Yeah, so we have to practice doing that, yeah, to remember Krishna. So that's called remembrance. And there's a statement here from the Vishnu Purana. Simply by remembering the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all living entities become eligible for all kinds of auspiciousness. Therefore, let me always remember the Lord who is unborn and eternal. Yeah, and another quote as well from the Padma Purana. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Lord Krishna, because if someone remembers him, either at the time of death or during his lifespan of life, he becomes freed from all sinful reactions. Yeah. Prabhupada said that we should think of Krishna. One time he said we should remember Krishna 26 hours a day. It's only 24 hours in a day. One time Prabhupada mentioned we should think of Krishna 26 hours a day. You know. But another Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also explains this principle of always remembering Krishna. That actually, it's not possible. This is, we're describing sadhana bhakti here, but it's not possible for a sadhaka. I mean, that's why we're sadhakas. That's why we're practitioners, because we can't remember Krishna all the time. But then he mentions that at least once or twice in the day. Let us try and do it for Mangalarti. When we come before Krishna, we're addressing our deities, then it's very difficult not to think of him. Yeah? So he mentions that there. For sadhaka, it's not a natural proclivity. Yeah? So then he mentions that's to remember Krishna's meditation on Krishna's form. Specifically, it's here. This is for so Krishna's form. That's described here in the Nectar of Devotion in great detail. Also, meditation on Krishna's qualities. Rupa Goswami will go on to describe Krishna's qualities and his Leela. Yeah. Now, down there's meditation, which is similar to remembrance, but it's oh yeah, actually I've just described that, but meditation is a deeper contemplation, and that's what these, you see my cursor here. Oh no, that's what these four are about. It means deeper meditation. So this is and there's different levels of meditation, which it's a separate topic, but it's not here mentioned, but it takes too much time to describe it. But in essence, as one practices, as one's heart becomes cleansed and one continues chanting the holy name of the Lord, then one's able to withdraw the mind for different degrees. So at first, it's practically impossible. Occasionally, you focus the mind on Krishna. You keep on trying, but the mind goes. But as you become more practiced and the heart becomes more pure, you can more hold the mind on the specific, for instance, on the sound of the Maha Mantra. And once you've got that point, you can go deeper into that. Yeah. So for accomplished devotees, their meditation is on Krishna's form, as mentioned just now, his qualities, his activities, yeah, and the devotional service to Krishna. So it's a meditation. All right. Now there's a nice story that's told in this regard, which I was very happy to read over again this morning, just to remind me of the details of this story. And I'm surprised it wasn't included as a slide here, this story. It wasn't even mentioned. So I thought, how did I miss that? This story is the story of, some of you have seen the picture, you already know the story. Yeah, it's a picture in the Nectar of Devotion. But for those of you who haven't, and even those of you who have, it's very nice to hear. This story is given as a evidence of the absolute nature of meditating upon Krishna. Yeah, that it's the same as being with Krishna. Yeah, so they tell the story of a Brahmin. This is from the Brahma Vaivata Purana. And there's one poor Brahmana, he wasn't well-to-do at all. It's in South India, in a place called Pratishtana. Probably pronounced that wrong, please forgive me, but Pratishthanapura. That's in South India. Now, he wasn't very well-to-do, but it didn't bother him at all. He was completely Atmarayam, he was completely satisfied. Yeah. Because again, he was thinking, oh, this is my past life. I must have been like this, must have been like that. So now I have, I live in this little mud hut, He didn't even have a mobile phone. Amazing. Imagine that. He didn't have a mobile phone. Wow. Very poor. Yeah. Couldn't afford one. Yeah. So he didn't care. He was very satisfied. He was, doing his puja. So he's very peaceful, He's very, because he's very peaceful, he's a Brahmana, he's very, his nature is very open-hearted. So he would just easily go and sit. Whenever there's any discussion amongst the Vaishnavas, he would go and sit down. He would love to hear. Whenever Vaishnava coming, he would sit down, let me hear. That was his nature. And and he used to hear about, the Vaishnava activities, they would describe what do Vaishnavas do, these devotees. So then there was described about, which we've been describing a little bit in our teaching here in South London, about Manasa Puja. Yeah, that in other words, if one is able to perform aspects of devotional service physically, they can do the same in meditation. And they get the same results. Yeah. Now, this was very attractive to the Brahmana because he didn't have much money. He couldn't afford his own deities, couldn't afford anything. Yeah. So he decided that that's what he would do. And he would meditate on grand, royal, devotional activities. And that's what he began to do. Yeah. So now, one thing he would do before he did the meditation, he would take his bath in the Godavari. Then he would sit in a secluded place. Then he would do some yoga exercise. He would do pranayam. Yeah, it's used as a technique from even Rupa Goswami mentions it as can be done before your Gayatri. Anyway, so he would do pranayam to steady the mind. Yeah, use breathing exercises. He would slow the mind down. And then Prabhupada speaks about that a little, but that's what he was doing. And then he would fix his mind on the form of the Lord. And then he would meditate, his first meditation, that he would be dressing the Lord. Yeah. In a very opulent way. Yeah. In the best costly clothing you could imagine. Gold, ornaments, helmets, all going on in his mind, just checking the time, other things that come into mind. But Mother Jamuna, the first Pujari of Shishi Radha Landaneshwar, in the beginning days, they only had one outfit. Or they had two outfits or something. So what Mother Yamuna would do, she would, every morning, she would sit in front of the deities and she would dress the deities in beautiful, exquisite clothes, but all within her mind. Yeah, and as the story goes, that every day at a certain time, the devotees would come down and she would explain deity greeting. She would explain how she dressed the deities that day in her mind. Apparently, yeah. And it's not so easy as well. It takes a somewhat purified state of consciousness to be able to do these things. So like he would do that, and he would, after he's dressed the Lord, all in his mind, ornaments and helmets, then he would pay obeisances. Yeah, but that wasn't the finish of it. Then he would, next thing he would do, he would imagine he was cleaning the temple. very nicely, cleaning the floor, cleaning the walls, doing everything. You know? Now, it's not recommended if you move into a temple, you sit there and just tell Rupa Nuga Bhakti, our temple commander, I'm doing it all within my mind. But anyway, get the idea. So this Brahmin, he was doing that. And the water he used in his meditation was carried in gold and silver jugs. Yeah. In a filling with holy water. You're seeing, some of you might be reading it as I'm saying the pastime here. Yeah, I'm trying to. Yeah, it's very. So I mean, I just used to tell one part of this pastime, but then I read through it. Well, it's so many wonderful details, you know, that I forgot. So, yeah. And he collected fruits, flowers, incense, sandalwood pulp, and placed it before the deities. He made flower garlands, and so much for the Lord's satisfaction. Then he offered arati in his mind, you know. And so he did that, he said, for many, many years. So how long that was, I don't know, but 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, every day. Yeah. And then it comes to this picture here. This is the part I normally tell. Normally just hear this part, where he prepared some sweet rice in his meditation, you know, with milk and sugar, and he offered to the deity, but he was a bit concerned because he had only just cooked it in his mind, so he thought it was still too hot. So in his mind, he wanted to touch it to see if it was still hot. As soon as he touched it within his mind, he was burned by the heat of the pot. And this is the picture here, you see? You see his fingers a little bit red. So he's burnt, and he come out, and it shocked him out of his meditation. And he looked at his finger. He's looking, wow, and his finger was burned. Yeah. And that was it. You see this picture here? This is the Lord in Vaikuntha. Yeah, the Lord in Vaikuntha, he was sitting with the goddess of fortune. And seeing this, he began to smile. Yeah. And so seeing the smile of the goddess of fortune became very, she was asking, why are you smiling? What is it? But he didn't inquire, you know, he didn't answer. He sent for an airplane to bring an airplane from Vaikuntha to bring him back into Vaikuntha. So this is the airplane just going to land and whisk him off to Vaikuntha. Yeah. So then Prabhupada mentions there that in regards to meditation, this shows how the Lord is all pervading in spite of his being locally situated in his abode. Although the Lord was present in Vaikuntha, he was present also in the heart of the Brahmana when he was meditating on the worshipping process. Thus, we can understand that things offered by the devotees, even in meditation, are accepted by the Lord, and they help one achieve the desired result. All right, that's quite an elaborate meditation. So Rupa Goswami is given that because the Goswamis themselves would do such things. Like there's a description of a dhyanam of the worship, manasa puja, done in the mind before one worships the Lord, the more elaborate worship. So first you meditate upon the abode of the Lord, then you meditate upon the form of the Lord, then you meditate on offering the items to the Lord. And in the Pancharatra Padipa, the orange book about devotional service, then there's elaborate description of Goloka Vrindavan, I think by Rupa Goswami or Jiva Goswami. It goes for pages and it describes their meditation. And there's so many details there. They're meditating upon Vrindavan and the lotus flowers, the scents, the flowers, the bees, the palaces, the cows, the cowherd boys, and all the details. So it's a practice by accomplished Vaishnavas, yeah, this meditation, yeah. So any questions about that or comments? So it's not so easy to be done, yeah. That's why actually So that's why sometimes you see in scripture that the highest form of meditation, sometimes it's given in scripture, is manasa. Yeah. Now, because it's so difficult in this age, then the highest, actually, we've been given the Maha Mantra, which is a audible sound that we meditate.
Please do.
Someone mute there. There's a, who's that? Okay, they've muted. Okay. All right. So that was discussion on these. Did we cover all four? Yeah. Hearing, expecting the Lord's mercy, remembering and meditating.
Prabhuji, can I ask a question about meditating?
Yes, please.
Please. I wanted to ask about like Leela Smaran in terms of like, it's way beyond my conception, but just the thought came. So I just wanted to ask that, are we allowed to meditate on the pastimes of the Lord? Like, even if it's not naturally coming to us, just try to do it, or it's not something that you should try and do?
You can try. There's no harm. You find your mind to stick to it for a few seconds and then fly away. There's no harm in doing it, but be careful. You don't get otherwise too artificially carried away. There's Leela Smaranam is a stage of Nam Bhajan. Yeah, there's two types. There's two types of accomplishment in Nam Bhajan. One of them is Shranastukhi Mukhi. I think I pronounced the name wrong, but that's where one is able to meditate upon the specific fixed frame picture of Krishna. And this was the meditation of Lord Brahma, where you fixed on a specific frame, say, of Krishna, and one has the ability to Nam Bhajan. Remember that. Then there's another more deeper accomplished form where one is meditate upon the unfolding pastimes of the Lord. Yeah, a pastime specifically, which is unfolding. So it's like moving. Yeah, but this is a practice of Nam Bhajan that's done by, again, accomplished Vaishnavas. So you might want to consult with your specific Diksha or Shiksha gurus about your qualification for going deep into that. But devotees can try these things. You can sit down tomorrow and picture, if you want, the deity's feet and things like that. But you'll find, it'll be difficult. It may be difficult to maintain it. And sometimes devotees will do that, then they start chanting the wrong mantra. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Ram, 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 Ram. That means no. The name itself or the mantra itself will flower into remembrance and revelation of the name's form, pastimes, etc. There's no artificial way to barge in. Yeah. You may try, but because we may not have the adhikar, it'll be quite flickering. But if according to our qualification of purity of your heart, then we may be able to for some time. And we can try these things. We can try little sojourns into different higher levels of chanting. But just be careful. Yeah. I'm not getting too carried away. Does that answer?
Yeah, that really helps. Thank you so much.
Yeah. But there's no harm. This is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to think of Krishna. So don't be aware we're trying it. But what form and how we meditate upon Krishna, it depends on our adhikar. Yeah. All right. So time check, 3 o'clock. We've got over half an hour left. So let's move into chapter 11. Now, let me just check how many slides I've got here. Okay. So, okay. Aspects of transcendental service. So this is going to describe the 9 main processes of devotional service. It says 9 here, but I'm just especially, or actually, Dasyam, Sakyam, and Atma Nivedanam. Of those 9, Swavam, Ketanam, Vishnu, Smara, Parasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atma Nivedanam. Now, we describe the others. So this is looking at nice pictures here. Dasyam, Sakyam, Atma Nivedanam. Okay. So servitorship. Dasyam. Now there's 2 aspects of this. You see it in the slide. Kamapanam means to offer one's activities to the Lord, and kainkaram, serving in the mood of a personal attendant. Now we're going to elaborate on these. There's a nice description given. This part I'm taking a lot from Dhanadhar Swami, but it's very interesting. Now, Kamapanam, this has two subdivisions. Yeah, I could have put this in another slide for your ease of understanding, but Kamapanam, which is offering one's activities to the Lord, has two further subdivisions. So there's a nice little discussion here. One is offering the fruits of one's prescribed duties in Varnashram. Yeah. The other is offering direct service within the 9 main processes of devotional service, which we just quoted. Yeah. Smaran Dasyam Atma Sakyam Atma Nivedanam, as mentioned by Prahlad Maharaj in the 7th canto. Yeah. Now, Prabhupada or Rupa Goswami brings up a controversy about this. Yeah. He said that some people will accept both these as servitorship in sadhana bhakti, both offering the fruits of one's prescribed duties in Varnashram, and 2, offering direct service within the 9 main categories of pure devotional service. So we follow what some will say this, but Prabhupada says that acharyas don't agree with this. Yeah. So this comes back to our Paribhasha Sutra. Yeah. Anyabhilasya sunyam jnana kamari navritam anukuyena krishnam silanam bhakti uttama. So one's engagement in Varnashram, it's fruitive work. Yeah. So pure devotional service has already been described in the introduction, should be free of kamadi anavritam. So therefore, our acharyas do not accept the offering of one's prescribed duties as an actual form of sadhana bhakti. Shravanam kirtanam vishnu smana pada sevan atanam mandam dasyam sakyam atmanivedanam. Yeah. And I think it's there in the Nectar of Devotion. Prabhupada quotes Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, commentary on Brahma Samhita, actually to support this. He says that the offering of activities in Varna and Ashram is called Gona Dharma. Gona means it's subsidiary. Yeah. It's not directly an anga of bhakti, but indirectly it's conducive. Do you follow? It's not doesn't come under the 9 activities of bhakti. So in other words, one is working with an ashram, yeah, and engaging the fruits of one's activities. But that's, you have to do more than that. That's not, yeah, I'm doing for Bhagavan, I'm giving my work is for Krishna, I'm doing for Bhagavan. Yeah. Do you chant Hare Krishna? No, everything I do is for Bhagavan. No, you actually have to engage in Sravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smanam, Padasevanam. Yeah, you're working and you got some attachment to the fruits of your work and you're giving it to Krishna, but that's not sadhana bhakti. It's nice, it's pious, but when was the last time you went to Bhagavatam class? I am not needing, I'm thinking of Krishna, all my activities are for Krishna. No, you have to actually engage in these 9 items. Yeah. So, and then I think this is Dhanadhar Swami for our further understanding of this point. He says here from the BBT commentary on 11:25:23, ordinary work performed as an offering to God without desires for the result is in the mode of goodness. Okay, so that's good. It's in the mode of goodness. You're doing it often to God. You're doing it with a mood of detachment. It's sattvic, yeah. Whereas activities in devotion, say Shravanam Kirtanam, glorifying the glories of the Lord, it's above the mode of goodness. Yeah. Did you follow that? It's above the modes, yeah? And then Prabhupada mentions here, in the opinion of the karmis, fruitive workers, offering results of karma is called servitorship. But according to Vaishnava acharyas like Rupa Goswami, servitorship means constant engagement in some kind of service to the Lord. And then Prabhupada gives a nice, he kind of reconciles both opinions. You see on page 94. It says, those who are engaged in fruitive activities or prescribed duties according to the four orders of the social and spiritual life are not actually pure devotees, but still, because they are offering the result to the Lord, they are accepted as devotees. When one has no such desire but acts spontaneously out of love of God, such a person must be accepted as a pure devotee. All right? So an interesting little philosophical kind of controversy there from our acharyas. Anyone have any questions on that? Is that kind of understood clearly? Yeah. So in essence, if someone, if you're okay, you're doing your duties very nicely, but are you engaged in hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord? All right. Now, next one is no questions on that. I don't know. I think that's a good sign. It means you understood. I guess who knows questions. If you ask a question, it means it's not clear. If you don't ask the question, perhaps it means it's clear. All right. So Kainkaram is the next part here. Kainkaram.
Krishna Prabhu.
Yes, please.
You were asking us to ask. I had this question, but I didn't think it was very important, but I'll still ask.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
We see many devotees who are not in the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, but in other Sampradayas, but they're very eager to serve. And they serve the temple nicely, but as per their Sampradaya, they do the things as per their Sampradaya. They are not doing chanting all the time, but they have knowledge of the Shastras, some of them quite deep knowledge, more than me, obviously, and they serve very nicely. So are they in bhakti or are they in varnashrama?
Well, it's not just one or the other. So it's not just black and white. Sometimes it's a little bit in between. There might be some strains of bhakti there, also some strains of fruitive activity. Yeah, so it may be, so it's kind of, it's not just one or the other. Often it can be, you understand?
Yeah.
No doubt there's bhakti there. I mean, they're spending their time coming to the temple, they're rendering service, but they still may be engaged heavily in, maybe attached to a lot of things, and may not be engaged in the activities as, chanting the holy name as given by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Yeah, so there's something's there, so we should encourage them, we can.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not just one or the other. It's often it's mixed. It may be 20 fruitive, it may be 70% fruitive activity, 30% bhakti. It may be, 50%, 50, it may be 40, 30. You get the idea?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. But for us, we're trying to come to 100% bhakti. That's what we're trying to do. Okay.
Thank you.
So Kainkaram. So that's the second type of servitude, and now that's the when one is directly performing devotional service, but they're in a specific mood of being a personal attendant of the Lord. So it's a little bit more personal. Kainkaram means a bit, as far as I know, it means more dear, it means more close. Yeah. Now, the activities may be similar, but the attitude is different. Yeah. So, in other words, one is engaged in Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, the 9 aspects of pure direct devotional service. Let's read here. His activity is kamapanam. Unless that is done with deep concentration in the mood of being a personal attendant of the Lord. You follow? So it's a bit more advanced. One is acting specifically as a personal tenant of the Lord. And I think it's here. Then there's a verse quoted on page 96, quite a well-known verse. Iha yasya hare tasye kamana manasagira nikalo apavastaso jivan muktas ujate. So this is a kankaram devotee. They're engaged their body, mind, and intelligence in the Lord's service. So they're, to some extent, or complete extent, considered to be untouched by the material world, because everything they have is engaged in the service of the Lord. Yeah. So that's illustration of a kankaram, constantly, mind, body, and words, in the Lord's personal service. Now, analyzing it further, this kankaram, personal servant, there is two types. So if you've got a notebook there, you can write this down. One is vishvasa, a superior well-wisher, and one is mitra, a friendly relationship with a peer. So it means like an equal. So the first one, vishvasa, a superior well-wisher, Prabhupada gives a summary of this. He says, this is page 96. The devotee who has confidence in devotional service to the Lord automatically follows all the rules and regulations with the faith that he will achieve the platform of transcendental life. Then an example of that is given of Draupadi, who sees the Lord as a friend, yeah, in a sense of Vishvasa. So the Lord, he's a well-wisher and protector. And we know the pastime where that was illustrated very much, when she was attempted to be disrobed. Yeah, the Lord was her protector and well-wisher. Yeah. Now, Dandadas Swami points out a nice twist here, that often upon reading, you probably wouldn't notice. But Prabhupada says there, he says, ordinarily the devotees see the Lord, or he's just paraphrasing Prabhupada, the devotees see the Lord as their well-wisher. But Prabhupada says, without much explanation, he says, by preaching Krishna consciousness, the devotee becomes the well-wisher of the Lord. You follow that? The Lord is our well-wisher. But by preaching, Prabhupada says the devotee becomes a well-wisher of the Lord. So you could make out of that what we want. It could capture, it's very interesting how dear preaching is to the Lord. We become a well-wisher of the Lord. Yeah. So then, let me just go. Okay, so there's a few more details here, but let's just go ahead a bit and describe mitra. Yeah, so this is the second type of friendship, as opposed to vishvasa, seeing the Lord as a superior well-wisher, a protector and benefactor. Yeah, as in Draupadi. This mitra is a little bit more intimate. Yeah. And obviously this is occurring at an advanced stage. Yes, again, one begins to serve the deity, is mentioned actually, in the mood of fraternity or equality, yeah, like a peer, not a superior. Yeah. One is beginning to relate to the Lord in a very fraternal way, or yeah. Some of us may see that devotees have been serving deities for many, many years. They have this, some devotees have this very fraternal way they interact with their deities, you know, and there's stories of that. Yeah, Rupa Goswami and others, Bamsidas Babaji, you know. So Prabhupada, then he gives, which an example I gave in trying to explain an aspect of Raganuga Bhakti a couple of weeks ago, and I gave this example. Then I went on to give another example. But Prabhupada mentions on page 97 in this regard, sometimes it is found that a pure devotee lies down in the temple of the Lord in order to serve him as a confidential friend. Such friendly behavior of a devotee may be accepted as raganuga or spontaneous, as though, according to regular principles, no one can lie down in the temple of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as we read, didn't we, an offense. This spontaneous love of Godhead may be grouped under devotional service in friendship. So, mitra, yeah. So they're looking upon the Lord as a peer, and they're relating to him in a very friendly way, not as their kind of benefactor and ultimate well-wisher, as in the mood of Draupadi towards Krishna. Yeah. So that's mitra. Now, the exact circumstances interesting, this example that's given of a devotee who lies down in the temple of the Lord to serve him as a confidential friend. Well, just the person might be in the same mood as the gopas, no? When they take lunch, they all lie down together. So perhaps the devotee the Lord takes lunch, he takes lunch and lies down with the Lord. You know, not literally. You know, the Lord's there on the altar, but then he's lying down. So obviously we are not in a position to imitate such activities. It would be an offense then on our part. Yeah, but sometimes you find this advanced devotees will be behaving with their deity in a very familiar way. Yeah, but shouldn't be imitated whatsoever. Prabhupada specifically trained his devotees to worship the deity in the mood of awe and reverence. Yeah, we are the Lord's servant. That's the safe path. Yeah, and generally, even if devotees do have these realizations, generally these realizations will be developed within. Externally, to set the example, they will not generally behave in such ways. That's how Prabhupada and their acharyas teach us. Yeah, so we worship the Lord with awe and reverence. You know. Yeah. Any comments upon that? Any questions? Time check. Okay. Interesting to hear these details, isn't it? So nice to hear. So then we come to Atma Nivedanam, surrendering everything to the Lord. Yeah. So Prabhupada describes this, page 97 to just over, and then to 98. According to different authorities, yeah, he gives a definition. There's the self is differently defined. And Prabhupada gets into it here, and he kind of elaborates on this, that sometimes Atma refers to the body. Yeah, so then Atma Nivedanam means full bodily surrender. And if sometimes Atma refers to the mind, then it obviously means full mental surrender. Then if it refers to the spirit self, then it means full surrender of one's self-identity. Yeah. Then there's a prayer by Yamunuja Acharya, Yamuna Acharya, excuse me, not Ramanuja, but Yamuna Acharya. Yeah. I think it's here on page 98. My dear Lord, I may be living within some body as a human being or demigod, but whatever mode of life, I do not mind, because these bodies are simply byproducts of the three modes of material nature, and I, who am in possession of these bodies, am surrendering myself to you. Interesting, it's not mentioned here, but can anyone tell me who exemplifies this? Yeah, each of these stages, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smara, Padanam, Padana, Sevanam, etc. There's a specific devotee who represents and exemplifies these different angas. Like
Maharaj?
who?
Ambarasi Maharaj?
Yeah, Ambarish Maharaj. So he, as we know the pastime, he gave absolutely everything. Yeah. He gave his credit card, he gave his car, he gave his house, gave his children, gave his phone, gave his laptop. He gave absolutely everything. Absolutely everything. And then when the Lord had taken everything, there was nothing left, and he had one more step. So he put it on his head. So yeah, interesting how it's not mentioned here. But it just came to mind just then. So Maharaj Ambarish is a wonderful example. Atma Nivedanam. Yeah. Yeah. So let's just see what. Okay, there's chapter 12 there. Okay, we might not make it there, but let's 5 minutes left. There's more here in this chapter. You scroll down. So another one, number 50, offering a favorite article. It is mentioned to offer the Lord one's favorite articles. Yeah. Nija Puyo Paharanam, offering a favorite article. Yeah. Generally, we should offer things that has not been enjoyed by us. Yeah, that's a general what we offer to the Lord. So interesting. But it says there, offer the Lord one's favorite articles. Yeah. Offer the best to the best. Yeah. But it's mentioned there, the Lord, what's the Lord's favorite article? This is what it, yeah, actually it means the Lord's favorite article. So that means things like peacock feather, mentioned there, peacock feather, etc. Different scents, flower garlands, different utensils for the Lord's pleasure. Yeah. So we offer the Lord these things. Yeah. This is considered an item of sadhana bhakti. And then tatati kale chetistam, performing all endeavors for Krishna. Yeah. Prabhupada mentions on page 99, a devotee who has a great establishment or factory may offer the fruits of all such material possession for the service of the Lord. Yeah. Often some would come, but often great industrialists and well-to-do persons would sometimes be hesitant to come before Prabhupada, because Prabhupada would inevitably instruct them to give everything to Krishna. So they sometimes become quite nervous and, yes, Swamiji, oh, now I have to go, Swamiji. So, because Prabhupada gave everything, so he had the potency to tell everyone else to give everything, for the service of the Lord. Then we'll probably finish, you'll probably start on chapter 12 next week. Let's just finish this here. Cover that one. Being a surrendered soul. So it mentioned here, there's a subtle difference between Atma Nivedanam and being a surrendered soul. Interesting what it is. So Shravanapati, being a surrendered soul, means to consider oneself to be subservient and to be protected by the Lord. Okay. But Atma Nivedanam means very subtle difference, but self-dedication. So this may be with or without a feeling of subservience and dependence. You follow that? This Atma Nivedanam might not have that mood. Yeah, which example did you give, Rupanuga Prabhu? You gave Ambarish Maharaj, no? No, it's Bali Maharaj.
Huh? Bali
Maharaj, isn't it? Yes, Bali Maharaj who surrenders everything.
Oh, yeah.
Last time, yeah. So it's Bali Maharaj, yeah, he's the one who surrenders everything. 3 steps of land is Bali.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so he's an example of Atma Nivedanam. Yeah. And then finally, for today, we have serving trees such as Tulsi. Yeah. This reference quoted to substantiate this item broadens the opportunity for serving Tulsi. Simply by seeing, simply by praying to, simply by bowing before, simply by hearing about, or simply by serving the tree, there is always auspiciousness. So Prabhupada introduced that in all of our temples. We are very familiar with Tulsi Puja. So it's been introduced by Prabhupada. And many devotees have Tulsi in their houses. Okay. So we stopped there today. We didn't quite get to chapter 12, but next week we'll begin there. And next week we need to get to chapter 14, 12, 13, 14. So next week we'll cover that. Then I think the following week there will be a little exam on this. Yeah. Yeah. So look out. So next week we're going to cover this subject. Evidences for the last angas up to 64. Okay. So we can look at this Kartik month, this celebration Janmashtami, and then there's lots of repetitions which we're going to clear up, yeah, throughout. As we said when we started this, some things are repeated more than once, so we're going to explain that a little, yeah. And again, this comes up again, worshipping the banyan tree. What's all that about? And then, okay, so thank you everyone for your nice, kind attention. Thank you for being with us for this 3 hours from 12:30 to 3:30. Well done. If you managed to stay tuned into your computer for that long. And let's look forward to being with you next week. Yeah. And again, if you want to read over those offenses in deity worship, or you can always do that. If you've got questions, we can try to answer them next week. Okay.
So next week we have a test next week.
No, I think it's the week after. Well, I hope, yeah, it's the week after.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we have to get to chapter 14. I've been instructed by Nityananda Padmanabha. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Hare Krishna. Hare Bol.
Thank you.
Krishna. Hare Bol. Have a good evening and a good week. Hare Bol.
You too.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu. Thank you.
Hare Bol.
Haribol.
Hare Bol, Bruce. Hare Bol. London College of Vedic Studies is here. It's going to switch us all off. 5, 4, 3, 2, no.